Hi everyone! One of the really hotly debated topics of the Diablo 3 open beta and server slam weekends was the seemingly really insane power of rogues. So I figured I'm gonna give my 2 cents about it. We have seen those rogue solo Ashava kills. I've actually done my own that probably a lot of you guys have seen. And there were just in general a lot of these insane clips from rogue just flying through the maps, exploding everything around them, and just generally having a pretty easy time. But I think there is a lot of stuff that people are also missing about this kind of snapshot that we have seen with this only level 20 beta. So I want to go through that. I hope you enjoyed this video so far, but before we continue, a quick word from today's sponsor, Opera GX. If you haven't heard of them yet, they created a new innovative browser that aims to break the boring meta of Google Chrome, Internet Explorer and Firefox. Basically just like me. This browser is specifically designed for gamers and has lots of interesting features that you should check out. For example, they have the GX store where you can download and install themes and mods for your browser experience with a click of one button. That completely changes the layout and even the sounds. You have keyboard sounds, you have background music that you can play. In addition, you have the sidebar where you can put, for example, your Discord or other messengers and open them and also apply a theme to that in-browser window. Or you can add shaders to the websites you're browsing, depending on the mood that you're in. In addition, Opera GX allows you to limit the resources the browser is taking with the CPU and RAM limiter. With a press of a button, you can decide to turn it on or off, and even decide how much the browser is allowed to take. If you're interested in trying out this browser, switching is very easy. You just go into the settings, synchronize, import all of your previous browser history, your cookies, your passwords, etc. And good to know, every single Google Chrome extension is also compatible with Opera GX as well. These are only some of the special features that Opera GX offers in comparison to other standard browsers. And if you're interested, you can go check out the link in the description and start breaking the meta right now. Now let's get back to the video. It seems like a lot of people seem to think that Rogue is by far the best class because of that. And I can kind of understand where that is coming from because of those clips that we have seen from the open beta, because we didn't have access to more, and because most people are probably not really, deep into the theory crafting as I am. You may have seen some of my videos, you may have seen me on my streams. I have been working on theory crafting a lot of builds that I'm slowly putting together here on my Discord, for example. So we have my own channel here, and I'm putting together various endgame builds, leveling builds, all that good stuff that maybe some of you have also used already. And imagine that a lot of people that do think that Rogue is so overtuned and needs heavy nerfs or something like that have probably not really done anything similar to that. The thing is that Rogue, compared to basically all other classes, almost has an entire toolkit already available at level 20. The only thing that you're really missing is the key passives at the bottom of the tree, but you don't really need ultimates that much on those rogue builds. They're kind of whatever. And also those key passes are not really the craziest on the rogue class. So most of the power actually comes from, just having really strong base skills, or core skills rather, and just the general synergies with all the tools, with imbuements or with traps or with the crowd controls, so they can stay alive. On top of that, Rogue also gets their class specialization combo points at level 15, and then at level 20 the follow-up inner sight. And with that you have basically everything available to you. If you compare this to other classes, druids don't even have access to their spirit boons at this low level, at least not in the beta that we played, because we were confined to the Fractured Peaks region, and you have to actually go to Skullsblin for that. Then you have the barbs that very slowly level up their weapons, and then have this technique slot that they couldn't unlock. Then you have the necromancers that also don't even have at least all the golems, and they are just lacking various other synergistic combo pieces basically. And the sorcerers that also just have one of the 2 enchant slots. And the combination of enchant slots is actually what makes sorcerer builds great, and for the most part. And additionally, most classes have way more impactful ultimate skills or key passes, or both, compared to the rogue in my opinion. If you look at, for example, the barb, we have Wrath the Berserker, which is probably going to be used in most endgame builds because the berserking bonuses are pretty high. You can scale them up with certain passives, for example, and this is just going to give you a massive damage boost later on. And then there are also these key passes here, like Unbridled Rage, 135% multiplicative extra damage. If you can solve the Fury cost, then this is, ridiculous. This is like 5 times better than anything that the Rogue has to offer, pretty much. On the Druid, for example, apart from the missing Spirit Boons, we have stuff like the Grizzly Rage, and you can try to get that to pretty much permanent uptime later on. And this can actually benefit various builds. Pulverize, Shred, Tornado, like basically anything you can do with Perma Grizzly Rage for the most part, because of this reset mechanic that the Spirit Boons offer. So this is potentially absolutely busted. This is also part of the reason why I believe that Druids, in fact, are the best class in the endgame. And they also have really, really powerful key passives, in particular Earth and Might. Earth and Might gives you full resources, perma crits. I mean, this is just bonkers when you can practice often enough. It solves basically most of the resource issues, and it just gives you so much damage compared to, some of the other stuff that, for example, Rogue offers. And then we have Sorks and Necromancers. I talked about them briefly. So Sorks just missing the second enchantment slot, and generally you try to make like a combo between the enchantment slots, so that, for example, you have certain like fire or cold effects in your build, and you can benefit from various other multipliers from the tree or from your items, such as chilling monsters, burning monsters, or proccing certain abilities like the firewall, like the meteors, like the ball lightning. And again, you have relatively powerful key passes, in my opinion. I think apart from the Necromancer, who in my book seems to be the weakest class overall, at least like with what I expect them to be like in the late game, all of the classes actually have really insane late game potential. And just these like early levels where you don't have all the tools available because you are just stuck at level 20 in the beta, just doesn't really paint the real picture. You also have to see that barbarians get 2 extra two-handed weapon slots compared to other classes, which also gives them insane late game scaling. This was part of the reason why I thought that barbarians were like absolute the favorite for being like the most OP class later on, but they have tuned them down a little bit in the recent patch into Server Slam. So I think they're just going to be maybe on the level of Druid or maybe slightly behind or so. Probably still one of the best either way, even though it might not seem that way from playing 1 to 20. And I know that now people might argue that it's bad that classes are so imbalanced at different stages of the progression, but I think this is pretty natural. So, certain mechanics just unlock at certain levels. You have to do a class quest, you have to go somewhere, and it was just a confinement of the beta. I would say that, some classes scale up a little bit faster, but starting at a lower point, for example, like the barbarians. So in the end, it comes down to what are the classes going to feel like once you have the full setup together. And getting to like, let's say level 50 or so, or level 40, where you'll probably have like, most of your build completed, and then it's just about picking up, more stats, more damage, etc. This is maybe where things get a little bit wonky, where sometimes you have those huge power spikes. For example, as well for the Rogue, if you have played one, you might have noticed that once you got to level 15 and you unlock those combo points, you were suddenly so much more effective compared to before. And now imagine something similar for the Druid or for a Barbarian that levels up their weapons and these kind of things. And I'm not just saying all these things because I want to protect Rogues from the nerfs, because it's my favorite class, because I'm gonna main it on launch and these kind of things. I legitimately think that Rogues are not the best class in the game. I think they are probably number 3. So they're gonna be nice, they're gonna be fast. Obviously, this is the design of the class. They are, sneaky, stealthy, jump around, all that kind of stuff. So this is kind of like what the Rogue has to be a Rogue. And it does make sense that a Rogue is faster than, let's say, a Necromancer walking around with their army and doing damage on the move with their minions and their dots and these kind of things. On the Rogue, you have to actually stand and attack, but then you can jump between packs more easily and these kind of things. What it also means is that Rogue, being this sneaky, stealthy class, also doesn't really have that much defense built into its base toolkit. The main defensive tools that Rogue has are the Sturdy passive, which gives you a whole 12% close damage reduction if you are playing a melee build, but that's not even always a given. There are also range builds. And then there is Momentum, again, only for melee builds. But most importantly, there is Dark Shroud. And Dark Shroud is going to be like the number 1 mechanic that keeps you alive in the late game, because Rogue simply doesn't have really that much else outside of that. while other classes get, for example, Challenging Shout, potentially like complete invincibility half the time or so on the Barbarian. You have Druids that have various very powerful defensive skills. They have strong defensive talents. They have lots of options. I think Druids are going to be very tanky boys later. You have Sorks with their barriers and lots of Paragon synergy. And you have Necromancers that have their minion army that will protect them later, on top of having stuff like Fortify, lots of healing from Blood Orbs, and also these kind of mechanics. So what I mean to say is that Rogues are probably going to be very squishy down the line. And despite having really high damage output and high crowd control, utility options, and being pretty fast, I think the main thing that will actually hold them back is going to be their survivability. And if you take a look at the builds I've been field crafting so far for the Rogue, like my endgame builds, you will notice that every single time I put 5 points in Dark Shroud. I think it's just going to be that important. Playing around it is going to be the key to actually being successful. And this is not going to be a very easy thing to do. 5 stacks is not all that much, and even just losing 1 or 2 of them is already significantly reducing your survivability against especially large hits, against bosses, against big elites or something like that. So you will have to play carefully, and you can't just rush through packs and jump around wherever you want at all times because of the lack of Dark Shroud stacks. So to sum this all up, yes, Rogues are really powerful, but only when you're really doing easy content. And of course, playing at level 20 in Act 1 of the game is going to be quite easy, especially when you're level capped and overgeared as hell, because you just can't progress in the levels, but your gear just gets better and better as you play. So in that case, yeah, Rogue is going to be one of the top classes. I imagine Rogue is going to probably have like the best farming build in the game. Maybe not, but there are definitely some contenders, I guess, on the Rogue that would be some of the top, at least because of the insane speed, because of dash and shadow step, making you really fast, just flying through those maps, through those dungeons and all that, but only when it's easy content. Whenever it comes to something like, high nightmare dungeons, pushing, bossing, these kind of things, I don't really know if Rogues are gonna be that competitive, because their synergies kind of fall apart when fights last too long, when you can't crowd control enemies, or when you just take too much damage in general. You don't really have that survivability that other classes do. So on that end, I don't really see that much of a problem with Rogues having high damage output and being fast. I think it's fine to have different classes kind of excel a little bit at different things. It adds to the class fantasy. Of course, we should aim for class balance so that every class can do everything at roughly similar capability. At least with like a few builds or so. But overall, I gotta say that the build diversity in Diablo 4 seems to be extremely high for an ARPG, especially for one that is just launching. I think that there's gonna be so many different options to explore on all of the classes, and despite me saying that this class is a bit better than the other, and this one is a bit weaker or so, I think it won't really matter all too much, and all the classes will feel great once you have, a full build, once you kind of found your path with what you're trying to do. And there's going to be tons of options to explore. And that's also it for this video. So just wanted to give my input on this and maybe clarify a few things that not everyone was really aware of when they saw those clips on the beta, when they played Rogue and felt they were like super overpowered. Yeah, in Act 1 at level 20, guys. Just keep that in mind. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.